ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, and TV19 viewers to the Baxter County Lincoln Day celebration. My name is Gary Smith. I serve as the chairman of the Baxter County Republican Committee. Once again this year, I think we have an interesting and exciting evening planned for your enjoyment. First off, to dispel or foster any rumors that might be floating about regarding our keynote speaker, David Hira, being unable to attend tonight, that in fact, unfortunately, is true. I was notified this Thursday afternoon that David and his wife were both seriously ill with influenza, and they would not be able to travel from the Dallas, Texas area to attend our meeting. We have replaced David with a noteworthy local celebrity who on very short notice has put together a program that should provide quite entertaining. As you might think, this caused a good bit of last-minute rescheduling, but instead we have for you tonight Mr. Norm Allen. Many of you will remember Norm from the Out of the Norm show on Mountain Talk 97. Since that time, Norm has started his own company, American Lifestyle Media, Inc., specializing in radio, television, print production, media marketing, and promotion consulting. Norm may be seen on Life Around the Lake, TV Channel 19. Norm, I'm turning it over to you, buddy. Please welcome Norm Allen.
Get strapped on here. I know he has a guitar on backwards, right?
Yeah, sure do.
Does it sound okay now? Can you hear okay? It's amazing. 1 year ago, I moved to Mountain Home, Arkansas, and didn't know a soul when we got to town. And 1 year later, I'm here. And it's because of you. I appreciate it. This is a little song about places we've been. Oh, I got to say one more thing. I'm a little nervous. I don't mind saying that because I see a lot of friends that I've made over the last year. But one lady in particular that I may get graded on. In 1974, I was in Texarkana College, down in Texarkana, and I had a wonderful lady who was very inspiring, a wonderful teacher who taught me things, told me things, scolded me, and things like that, and even graded me. So if I get a report tonight from Miss Jody Parsons, it is really an honor to get to see you again. I really am glad to see you. Finally made it, Miss Parsons. The lady behind the camera, by the way, to introduce you to her, she's working tonight, but she usually doesn't have to, but she does tonight. That's my wife, Nancy Allen. I hope you're welcome. Roosters crowing in the morning, freight trains in the night, 18-wheelers grinding up the grade, there's a June bug on the porch light. Crickets chirping on the fresh-cut grass, the moss is hanging from the tree. Sweet, sweet sound of a southern summer night floating on a honeysuckle breeze. Going home's not a hard thing to do. I close my eyes and I see me there with you. You can't go far from things that are so dear and true, like love in the South and me just loving you. I'll never miss the days of smelling the rain on a field that's freshly plowed, the Sunday morning sounds of the country church choir singing just as I am, or cooking grains in the spring or a catfish fry, things I'll never do without. Or hearing I love you with the long southern drawl, that's my favorite song of the South. Going home's not a hard thing to do. I and me just loving you. Can't go far from things that are so near and true, like loving the South and me just loving you, loving you. Thank you very much. Doesn't that draw a wonderful picture again? You know, we are so big in this country, especially in our age group, all of us baby boomers and just barely post-baby boomers, or pre-baby boomers too. There may be one or two of them here. We are so big on nostalgia. We love to look back and see the pictures and things of our youth and of our younger years, and somehow or the other we have selective memory on those kind of things. We forget the things that were hardest, but we don't forget the results of it. And that's something that we as a party are going to be approaching this year, the results of our nostalgia. And that's what I'll be addressing in just a little while. But I want to do a couple of more things. You know, watching this stuff on television, has anybody gotten tired of it yet? Yeah? Really? You know, the one person in the world that I would hate to be, in all of the world, if I had to choose someone that says, please God, don't make me that man, it would not be Osama bin Laden. It would be next Wednesday morning, Bill Clinton. Oh. So I think if they're going to have campaign songs and things of that sort, which we've seen, you know, there's always a big campaign song going on. I think Hillary needs a new campaign song. And she needs to go back in nostalgia again and probably pick one. If I were going to do Hillary's post-Tuesday campaign, this would be her theme song. Treat me like a fool, treat me like a fool, oh, break my foolish heart, tear it all apart, please love me. And if you ever go, darling, I'll be so lonely. Oh, I will be sad and blue, crying over you. Please love me. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The poor lady has a problem being loved, wouldn't you say? But I think you have to be lovable to be loved. Now the other guy, rock star status he is enjoying. He has an answer for everything, and it's an easy, pretty answer. In fact, his song, oh, wait a minute, I have to have a prop for this. I just can't just throw this song out there. I have to have a prop. I'll be right back. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a Coke, keep it company. Hey, at work last week on CNN and you know, Fox News, I thought if I wore a turban, I could get a little more attention out there. It's crazy, it's crazy. I was trying to think of a song for John McCain, but we sang it a little bit earlier as the flag was being brought before us. And I know some of you will disagree with some of that, but hopefully in some of the remarks tonight we'll be able to address that a little bit. Because now we are at a time of patriotism, active patriotism, not words, but committed patriotism. And that's what we're going to be facing in the next several months. And each and every one of us will make decisions concerning that. We will have our compromises that are necessary, and we will have things that we won't like. If the perfect one comes along, and I think he already has, and we know what happened to him. We don't want to see that happen to anybody else, so the perfect one is not going to come along, but one that we can live with, because the true leadership I read a speech today, and I'm going to start preaching here in a second. I saw a speech today by Ronald Reagan. I think he's still in the grave. He did not rise. There's only been one of those. But I saw a speech by President Reagan. He said that he had read the Soviet Constitution. And he said, here in the Soviet Constitution were all those important things that said freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and had a whole list of things. He said, but of course you know that they didn't allow that, even though it was in their Constitution. And he said, our Constitution says the same thing as many other countries. The only difference, and the thing that made the difference in the world, and why we are still, in spite of the media, we are still the darlings of the world and the blessed ones, was the preamble. The preamble of the Soviet Constitution says, we, the government, will allow the people to. Our preamble is, we, the people, will allow the government to. That's what makes us excited. Brother, I appreciate you, David. In your opening remarks and prayer, I thought, now I'm a little too Baptist there, and there's a bunch of East Side Baptist people here. You know, there may be a plate come out here pretty soon. But the important thing is that if we're going to give proper credence and direction to what we want our country to be, if it doesn't start spiritually, it won't happen materially. So I'd like to go back just a second, do one little quick thing here, and then I'll put the guitar down. How many of you know what a brush arbor is? Oh yeah, down yonder, a brush arbor. That's right. I remember brush arbor. I was a minister back in the 70s, and we celebrated in 1976 our centennial, and we built a brush arbor, and I got to preach in a brush arbor. It was very exciting. And how many remember a mourner's bench? A mourner's bench, yeah. And the pallets, where you lay down the babies down close to the mourner's bench. All of those things, yeah, those pictures come back to our mind when we start talking about it. And we'll begin to smell that summer breeze and that honeysuckle breeze that I sang about a little bit while ago. We'll begin to see those pictures in our mind. And the thing that makes them come back are the songs. When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal, bright and fair. When the Savior shall gather over on the other shore, and the roll is called yonder, yes, he'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a land on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Tempted and tried, we wrought me to wonder why it should be thus all the day long, while there are others living around us, never molested, though ever wrong. But Father alone will know all about it. And Father alone will understand why. So cheer up, my brother, the sunshine, we'll understand it all by and by. Sometimes I feel the pain of my youth. I paid a price for my sin. I can never say I'm sorry enough for being the fool that I've been. Some things I said, some things I've done were good enough to get me through. But I can never change or right my wrong till I met a friend like you. A friend like you who reached out and it touched my heart. A friend like you who loved me from the start. Saving my soul and saved my life from the things I used to do. I can finally become the man I need to be because I have a friend like you. You know that life has a habit of beating me down. It gets so hard to bounce back. Trying to understand the things of the world, trying to stay on the right track. Oh, but you reached in and you pulled me out to see a different point of view. The joy I know and the love I've learned comes only from a friend like you. A friend like you reached down and you touched my heart. A friend like you loved me from the start. Saving my soul to save my life from the things I used to do. I can finally become the man I need to be because I have a friend like you. I can finally become the man I need to be because I have a friend like you. Like you. Thank you very much. Give me just a second to set this down. Let's see, Gary, I think we have to turn this thing on, right?
There's two switches.
2 switches? You'd think I know how to do this, wouldn't you? Do television every single day and have to deal with microphones and things of that sort all the time, and sometimes you just can't find the on button. Sometimes on television you can't find the on button. And probably in my show, some of you may want to find the off button every once in a while. No, it has been a privilege and a joy. You know, it was especially nice tonight not only to see a lot of you that I haven't seen in several months due to workloads and things of that sort, but it's been really nice when people came up and said they missed the radio program. I know a lot of you are watching us on television, which I appreciate that immensely, and my advertisers appreciate that. We're building a new TV station out in Bull Shoals. Started it last October, and it's been quite a work. It takes about 70 hours a week to program what you see on there, in spite of Sudden Link's faux pas, where we have some technical problems on occasion. But it's been a real hard work. But the desire of my heart and the desire of having a television station in this area is that we're going to be able to serve the community with not only a place to be proud of, but a place for information, inspiration, and motivation. And that's what I want to see that TV station happen. And it is doing that. But you who remember the radio shows, I really appreciate your comments tonight. It's nice to be missed there, and maybe someday down the road that will change again, because I would love to do radio again as well. I was thinking a couple of days ago, after I was asked, Gary called me on Thursday afternoon, or Thursday evening it was, and asked if I would be available to be with you tonight for this event. And I'm most honored to do that, considering it's only been 1 year since we moved to this town and didn't know anybody.
So I think we've made some good friends here, and I really, really, really appreciate you. We are blessed for having you and being a part of this community. And it goes back to some of the speeches I've had the opportunity to give at the Rotary clubs or the Lions clubs or some churches, where I've said there's a big difference between being a newcomer and an outsider. Many of you who came from other places around the country, you know what it feels like to be an outsider. You can live here all of your life for the next 40 years, and if you came from somewhere else, some people will still see you as an outsider. The difference between an outsider and a newcomer is this. A newcomer is a person who comes in, just as you and I did at your own particular time in your personal history, and you brought a toolbox full of experiences and wonderful adventures and wonderful background and things and skills and talents and gifts. And you came to town and you set it on the table and said, where can I fit in? What out of my box can I use to make this community better? I want to contribute. I'm a newcomer. But those who are outsiders came with their same toolbox, set it in the same place, and said, this doesn't look like Chicago, California, or Texas, therefore we need to change it so it will, and I'll get sick of this and move on in a few years. Just like you did from those prospective places. We want to be noted as people who are creating a heritage for the future and appreciating and respecting the heritage that we've attached ourselves to when we get here. We are contributors. We are newcomers. We are not outsiders. And we have proven that by the energy and power that we've seen in our elected officials that we have in Baxter County as a bastion and an island of right-minded people to see our community hold on to the values and heritage that we hold dear and the reason we came here to begin with. You didn't come for the lake. You didn't come for the river. You came because there's people who are like-minded and like-spirited who want to preserve an American heritage. That's why we're here. And we get the lake to boot. That's the good part. Now, as we do approach this crazy year that we're in right now, we can go all the way back to 1856 when the Republican Party was born in Wisconsin. I'm not going to bore you with a long story of that because the party has definitely changed through the years from 1856 when John C. Fremont from California was the first presidential candidate on the Republican ticket and lost. And he carried, according to my notes here, he carried 11 states at that time out of 19, but still lost the electoral on there, was not able to get elected. The Republican Party as we know it and what we want to preserve didn't start until 1980. Because before then there was no talk of spirituality and how it fits in with our politics. There was no talk about what was right and what was wrong. There was a talk of fiscal responsibility. There was a talk of smaller government. All of that were part of campaigns that went on years gone by. And when we look back at those and we see the weaknesses of things like the Herbert Hoover administration and places like that in our history, we're going to find that the one thing that was missing in all of those that kept it from working as well as it could was the spirituality of it. It was all based on materialism, and it eventually changed. Now, something forced us to change that in 1980. We had a great voice, no doubt, in Ronald Reagan. I think we all revere and appreciate the man, and for many of you who've had the opportunity to meet him, it was probably a thrill of your life. It was for me. I got to shake his hand one time, and I'll never forget it. He goes way above shaking hands with Willie Nelson or Muhammad Ali or any of those people that's been in entertainment. He's way above that in my mind because he changed the course of world history, not just American history. If we want to go back and talk about where we are right now, some of us want to go back to the 1990s, and let's just take out our mud buckets and throw as much mud and sling as we can about Bill and Hillary, and we can all make jokes about it. We're disgusted with it. We're tired of it. We want no more Clintons in the White House at all. Because the wounds are fresh. But we're going to have to go back and look and see in our history where some of the decisions that have been made that's brought us to the place that we are now started. And I dare say the place I want to go back is before Reagan. Way before, not very far before Reagan. You've heard Osama or Hillary Clinton stand on a platform and say, you know, words count. We all have words. Let's have action. Let's look back in our history, and I want to share with you just briefly a little bit about some words that were spoken. Here's a quote. An attempt by any outside force to gain control of the Persian Gulf region will be regarded as an assault on the vital interests of the United States, and such an assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. Pretty strong statement, isn't it? Who do you think said that? Jimmy Carter. Words. If we want to see the words in action, here's this promise and this strong statement, then we have to look at the final results. When President Reagan came out and said, I want prayer back in schools, I want us to be the shining light on the hill, when he began those kind of talks and themes throughout his messages to us as a country, the only thing we have to judge in history is to look back and see that his words are manifest in the prosperity that we have now. We see the end result. We see the end result of Jimmy Carter also having words. Like 52 hostages for 444 days. Anybody remember that? Of course we do. And how worried we were and how everything was beginning to fall apart, it seemed, in America. 52 hostages held in Tehran, Iran. The Ayatollah had come back. And all of this was affecting the United States in a way that was just destroying our infrastructure. According to some of the writers that I've been reading lately, we came to a point where we were closer to nuclear war during that period than we were even in the 1950s or in 1960 or 61. Because the world saw our leadership as nothing but words and action that was totally inadequate to meet the need. The obvious response were the 52 hostages, 444 days in Tehran. Oh, by the way, as those things were in there, Mr. Carter decided that the best way to deal with that was not militarily, remember? The first part of that, until we got toward the end. For over 2 years, this man stood there and said, we're going to talk to them. Let's negotiate with them. Let's go to our enemy leaders and talk to them. Has anybody heard that in a speech this last week? We don't have to have a war. We don't need our military in there. We want to talk to them. And we'll go without even telling them what we want to talk about. Just as they'll sit down, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And that's the message it comes across. And we see the end results of that in a person like Jimmy Carter. And we would see the same result in a person like Barack Obama. That was not intentional. Well, we did see Jimmy Carter take military action, didn't we? Remember that? The big fiasco with the helicopters flying into the desert of Iran and we're going to let our troopers take off. What happened? 2 helicopters ran into each other and another one they couldn't get started again because they didn't have parts for it, and 8 Americans died as a result of that, and we had to come out of there. That was a Carter military action after empty promises that he made during a serious problem that was going on in our country. One writer put it right. He said, you know, if Jimmy Carter had been president in 1945, the atomic bomb would have been dropped on Honolulu. He would have missed it altogether. Do we also remember pictures in the paper of aerial shots over Vietnam where there was a big empty field, and in the middle of that field was a big number. It said 52. And it was widely rumored that it was MIAs and POWs who were left over from the war, and said, don't forget us. And that's exactly what happened. I don't want to get off on that subject too much because I get too excited about it. But there have been people left behind in conflicts that we've been involved with that will never return. Their bodies will never return home. And the only thing we have left is their memory. We will never forget those 52 people who were held hostage. Another thing that happened then that helped form what we're doing right now in the Middle East was in 1979. I heard some people giving a real problem about George W. Bush and said, well, you know, he's following the Republican way of war and all this stuff. And they, you know, we supplied Osama bin Laden and we did this and we did that. When really in 1979 it was Jimmy Carter who started backing the Muslim resistance. And they were being armed. It was in 1979. It was not a Republican. It was a man named Jimmy Carter. Supported the Muslim resistance against the USSR. Then the KGB influence became part of terrorism, which I believe still is part of the terrorism. In 1979, there was a book by Claire Sterling called The Terror Network. Some of you may have read it. And the big theme of that whole book was the Middle East is going to get weapons of mass destruction. That was in 1979. We were already being warned that these things were forming in the Mideast. This thing is not a new war. Not even counting the spiritual side of it that goes back 3,000 years. Then there was in 1979 a magazine called The Progressive printed a long article, How to Build an H-Bomb. Ring any bells? Remember those things? How to Build an H-Bomb printed for the world to see and for any organization throughout the world to have access to. The world was fought. This is how close we came, folks, to having a catastrophe of worldwide proportion with no American leadership that had words and a pretty good accent. Andrew Young met with the PLO in 1979. Then Libya came into the picture. Remember Libya and Mr. Gaddafi? Wore a turban very similar to Mr. Obama's had on last week. Here was a man in Libya trying to get a deal to get airplanes from the United States. He was a terrorist nation, the most dangerous terrorist nation at that time, trying to get aircraft from the United States. So he had to have somebody to broker that deal to be able to put it together and provide the influence on the president and other people in order to try to get those airplanes into Libya. Guess who the guy was? You probably remember it. I hope you do. He was a registered lobbyist named Billy Carter. They named a beer after him, and he's selling planes to Libya. That got caught up in 1979. The Attorney General was accused of a cover-up in that. There were drug charges against the Chief of Staff, Hamilton Jordan, in Jimmy Carter's administration. The Treasury Secretary, William Miller, was in a financial scandal. The only administration in American history that was tied directly to terrorist links was going on at that time. In Korea, the Korean CIA assassinated their president. Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia. Europe was in turmoil and trying to rearrange itself. Remember when Tito died? Everybody in the world wanted to influence there. All the leaders of the world came together in Europe to go to the funeral of Marshal Tito. They wanted to have that influence and put in their 2 cents worth to try to stabilize Europe. The United States sent an emissary to that particular meeting. It was Jimmy Carter's mother who was sent to Marshal Tito's wedding or funeral in order to represent the United States in a tumultuous turmoil time. He sent his mother. In 1979, and one in 1979, one in 1980, we had U.S. warning systems go off that Russian missiles had been fired. We were that close to someone putting their hand on the button and the President of the United States opening the football and ready to start a nuclear war. Fortunately, we found out it was a technical problem and they were able to stop it in the nick of time. That threat was very real. That threat was very real. Not to mention what happened right here in the United States. In 1980, inflation was 18%. The first quarter, it dropped to 13%. The prime rate in October of 1978 was 10%. Too high? How about 1979 when it was 15%? Or how about April of 1980 when it was 20%? Or how about January of 1981? The mess peaked out at 21.5% for prime lending rate. As compared to between 2001 and 2004, our prime lending rate averaged 4 to 6%. 21.5%. It destroyed the steel industry in our country. It destroyed the automobile industry in our country. We began to have racial turmoil again. We saw the penitentiary in New Mexico taken over by inmates. There were 18 people killed in that event. In Miami, we saw $100 million in damage done when there was white versus black. Then Fidel Castro looked at the United States and said, look, all of you down here in Cuba, if you want to leave, go right ahead. He allowed them to load up boats, and 125,000 Cubans left Cuba and landed in South Florida, forever changing the face of that part of the country. 125,000 Cubans, all at one time. Then there was Abscan. That's when you could go to a hotel room and there'd be a guy dressed like an Arab sheik, and he had a suitcase full of money, and he invited senators to come and see him. He was buying influence for Atlantic City casinos and willing to buy political influence. One man in particular, William Harrison from New Jersey, was a senator, a Republican or a Democrat senator. Harrison Williams just proved that they were willing to sell U.S. interest to foreigners or to Arabs. Then there was MyPorn, which was linked organized crime to pornography. That whole program came out, $1 billion industry in pornography, with organized crime backing it, right after a report came out from a liberal writers and so-called scientists who said pornography is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. The words that were spoken in 1979, 1980, during that period, we are living with the results of those words right now. The decisions that we have to make politically are the results of what we had to deal with back there, of decisions that were made back then. Abscam, MyPorn. It just drives me crazy sometimes when I think about this thing. It just drives me crazy. Now we've got someone named John McCain. Some like him, some don't. You know what? We're all going to have to love him. We're all going to have to raise him up in prayer. We're all going to have to think about it. We're all going to have to write about it. Don't forget that man in 1980 that we hold so dear supported abortion rights at one time while he was governor. Don't forget that that man who was governor of California that we hold so dear endorsed the ERA. Don't forget that that man opposed an anti-gay Briggs bill that was in the California legislature at the time. And we also got no-fault divorce during that period. A travesty to the American family. Some of us have benefited from that from time to time. But no-fault divorce really was something that said you don't have responsibility, so therefore you can call it quits. It is not what marriage was intended to be. It is not what marriage should be. And if we're going to strengthen that in our country, we need to redefine marriage as what it really is. First of all, it's not a union from the county or the state. It's a union that God puts together and ties together forever. So as we look back in our history and we see some of the mess that happened, and you hear people say George W. Bush is the worst president we've ever had, give them a little history lesson and let them see why we're in the Middle East, and you'll see that it goes back to there, back to some of those decisions. When you have people who come along and say, you know, we don't need another Bush in there when they talk about McCain. He's not. We didn't know what Reagan was going to be. We knew what he was overall. We also see that he had some places that we wouldn't agree with. We're facing the same thing. Is John McCain going to be another Ronald Reagan? No, there's only been one. And there will only be one in American history. But he has the opportunity, with our support and prayers, to fulfill our dreams in keeping people responsible in marriage, in abortion rights, where abortion is murder, where the entire population of California, 46 million people, has been killed since 1973. I saw a bumper sticker the other day. It just struck me deep. It said, "Oh, dear God, please send us the cure for a person who can cure cancer. Please send us the person who can bring peace to the Middle East. Oh God, please bring us someone who can help us lead our country." And God answered back, "I did, but you killed them." The lives that have been lost, the opportunities for our country that have been lost through bad decisions, we are paying for now, and we don't have to stand for it anymore. This is our year. We're going to see the silliness of Barack Obama and the Clintons, which if it wasn't so serious, it'd be funny. We're going to see America stand up again, and it's going to come through our churches. It's going to come through our community organizations like Rotary Club, Lions Club, Kiwanis Club, Civic Clubs. If you're a member of one of those, you need to be active in what's going on in our community and say, we have a voice and we want it back. We want our voice heard, and we want to say our country is going to become what we expect it to be. This is our opportunity. I've told the story many times, and I'll close with this real quickly. It's a story that I relate to. It's a guy who went to a construction site. If you've heard it, please forgive me. But a guy goes to a construction site and he looks at the guy down here on his knees and he's digging a hole over here. And he digs the dirt out here and he takes it over here and puts it down. Then he comes back and gets some more and he's back and forth. And the interviewer says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm digging a hole." "Why?" "Because I was told to." "Well, what if they don't want the dirt over there?" "Well, I'll be back at work tomorrow and I'll move it back over here. I don't care. I'm doing what I was told to and I'm doing my job that I get paid for." Well, the man went on down the way, and here's a guy with a bunch of cinder blocks and some mortar, and he's throwing the mortar on here and stacking a brick up and throwing a little mortar and stacking another brick. He says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm putting my kids through college. I'm keeping my wife fed. I'm paying my car payment. I'm taking care of my mortgage. I'm sweating. Oh, how long do you want to do this?" "Till all of that is paid off, and I will never look back on this when I can walk away from this miserable life that I have and having to slap this mortar on these bricks. I'm tired of sweating and I'm tired of hurting. But I have to do it because it's my responsibility. I will do my job." The last guy is down on the line too, and he's got his bricks already stacked up a little bit, and he back up and look at it and wipe a little mortar off, put another brick on there, and the interviewer asked him, "And what are you doing?" And he stopped, wiped the sweat off his brow, looked around, and he said, "I'm building a cathedral. I'm building a cathedral." You see, the vision of the last man didn't make the work any easier. The vision of the last man did not complete the whole task. It took the guy who was working with a grudge in his attitude. It took the man who was digging the hole, mindlessly doing what he was told. All of them get paid. But the end result was the man on the end who said, "I see the cathedral." And if we're going to approach November with we'll take the lesser of three evils or the lesser of two evils, we are doing nothing but digging the hole and moving the dirt. And then 4 more years or 8 more years, you'll have to change the dirt, move it back, and you'll have the same attitude and never see the cathedral. When we come out this year and support our Republican, conservative, true Americans as we go to the polls, we're going to have to look at those people, including John McCain or anybody else in our party who is running, and see the building around them before the first brick is laid. If you can see that building, you'll see the same vision that Ronald Reagan saw when he walked into 21.5% interest rates and a country falling apart. When he walked in and saw a military where people were ashamed to wear the uniform. And many of you were wearing the uniform during that time. You know what I'm talking about. When people were called baby killers because they were in the military. When we couldn't go into certain parts of cities in a uniform. Ronald Reagan walked into that. And he said, "I see the cathedral." So I would challenge each of one of us tonight, as we go away from here, talk about it. When you go to family reunions, we don't talk about politics and religion. Why would you not talk about the 2 most important things that affect every life that you're around, and your business and your job and your family and your children and your grandchildren? Why would you put those subjects off limits when you're with people that you love? That makes no sense to me. It's time it became important to talk about politics. It's time it became important to pray together. It's time we became proud to be spiritual, conservative-minded caretakers of the American heritage. You'll see some of it in Newt Gingrich's writing. You'll see it in Ronald Reagan's speeches. You'll see it in the turmoil after whatever history has to say about GW in the next 20 years. The building will not build itself. I challenge each of us to pick up our lathe, get ready for the work, and bring somebody with you. God bless America. Thank you very much.